Hi, I'm Jason Sutherland. I do the music and the sound on Angerfoot. In this video, I'll talk about some of the techniques and design decisions I made in making the music. If you haven't played Angerfoot, I'll start off by explaining how the music functions in the game. Angerfoot is a first-person shooter. You kick through a door in order to progress through a level. You can use weapons that you pick up and also throw throughout the game, but essentially you can kick your way through the entire game. When we started the initial prototype in 2020 for the 7-day FPS jam, Luke introduced me to Gabba and Dutch Hardcore. We watched a bunch of Dominator videos, which is a festival that's popular in the Netherlands, which have huge, insane sets and like facades and stages. It's crazy. In experimenting with the sounds and making the first yet-to-be Angerfoot song, I made a lot of short loops that had a rise in energy in each one of them. They were short melodies, quite simple, but had a sense of urgency, kind of like the drop in the Dominator concert. So I stitched all of these short loops together, and in testing the early prototype gameplay, realized that the kicks were landing on the music loop changes, and from there I felt like this may be a fun way to make the music dynamic by changing the music clip each time you kick through a door into a new room. Each song in Angerfoot is made up of one idle loop and 4 to 5 action loops. All of these elements are playing at the same time, but only one of them will have their volume turned up. The rest volumes will all be turned down, but playing in the same timeline, as if to keep things in time, musically. Action loops are the meat of the song. They're like the song verses. They play when you've just kicked through a door into a room full of enemies. Each time you kick through a subsequent door or go through the next room, the music loop will change between one of those 4 or 5 action loops, and it will keep cycling through, creating like a dynamic playlist essentially of that song. When you've cleared the room of the enemies and you're walking around the room, get into the next door to kick, the action music will fade out into what it was called in idle loops. The idle loop is essentially always playing underneath everything. It's a subdued loop with a lower energy. It can be a variation of the action loops, or just a simple kick drum or bass line. Most of the time I made it sound as if the idle loop was coming from another room. It's almost as weird, it doesn't make sense, but this is weird diegetic separation of the music's in world, but then it's kind of in your ears, and then it's like in the room again. It doesn't need to make sense, it's Angerfoot. It just feels cool. From a game design perspective, it helps players know when they've cleared a room and there's no more enemies left, but musically it helps create the impact when you move from room to room. If the frantic action music was playing all the time, there was no threat around you, it wouldn't give you the sense of a threat when there was one. There's nothing trying to kill you, so it was best to just clear the room, fade out into the sort of more subdued, something that's not moving you forward much. So as long as you're kicking enemies and progressing through the level at a relatively fast pace, the music will accommodate that action. The idle loops are intentionally monotone or lacking melody. It's so that when you switch to an action track, the melody within that track might start halfway through because all of the loops are playing at the same time. The volume is only changing at that moment when you kick through the door, so it could be at any moment in the song. It won't necessarily be on time with the beat of the song. So the idle track kind of hides how many bars have been played or how many kick drums have played, so your brain thinks, oh, that was the right time for the music to drop. It also means it can start halfway through a melody in an action loop and not sound so jarring because it didn't go from one melody to another one halfway through. There are some exceptions, but for the most part that system works quite well. Because the loops are triggered at any time, I couldn't have any dips in energy or any build-ups within those music loops. They had to sustain their energy at any moment so that when the player kicks through the door, it's halfway through the loop. There's no like drop in energy, it's full pace energy until you've killed everyone in the room. There's a term in music called the Shepard's tone, which is it's like a scale ascending and descending at the same time, and when they're combined it gives the illusion that it's infinitely rising. As you can hear in this example, the note will rise forever. It feels like it. So you can sit here and kick the door whenever you feel like, and it'll feel like it's on the drop. This was the first song made for Angerfoot. Right, so something that's a common theme in the Angerfoot music is rising notes. So an example would be these three sections here. I guess you could call them parts. These would be exported as loops. Get the picture. So I've got this little rising note here. I mean, it sounds terrible on its own, but without it, doesn't feel like you're moving forward, or like it feels like it wants to pull you forward. It feels like you're kind of just stationary. But you add this in, gives you an anticipation, like something's gonna happen. Same example here. Kind of like there's nothing going on, and you like wait. Bring it up. This is an exception. There's no rising note here, but it's a bit of like a break moment. There's still rises at the end, just a little bit. But those quick rises also add a lot of energy and movement, so take those out. Yeah, get the picture. The action gameplay can be incredibly fatiguing to listen to for a long period of time. I think people's stress levels rise when playing this game as well, so I believe it's the result of the frantic music. There needed to be some moments of rest for the players' ears and their nerves. Thinking about Shit City, sort of lo-fi beats with a sinister feel felt right, and it's also kind of the music I enjoy most making on a personal level. That section of the game, although it's not the part that people are most hyped about, I was pretty hyped to be working on that stuff. There were obviously certain elements I tried to include in different gangs in the different regions so that they felt fitting in terms of a sound palette. And although using this approach of making music per gang, per region, even in the gameplay action loops, we ended up just keeping the music quite random. There's obviously certain moments where it's locked in and curated, but for the most part, the music will play any song at any given time, and it could have been intentionally for the debauchery region, but it was like played in the trash region, so everything shared a similar vibe, but you can tell there's elements of specific gangs in some of the songs. That's it. I hope this was insightful and helpful to anyone, and if you played Angerfoot, thank you, and I hope you had fun. Thank you for watching.